Welcome to the Haven for Soul Care, the podcast where we explore the art of nurturing the mind, body, and spirit. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to help you create a life of balance, peace, and purpose. Whether you're seeking guidance on personal growth, wellness, or simply need a moment to reconnect, this is your safe space. I'm your host, Brianna, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in and take care of the soul. Welcome to the Haven for Soul Care podcast. I'm your host, Brianna, and today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Gertrude. Am I pronouncing it right?
You got it right. Yep,
Good.
Gertrude.
And so I'm excited to have you on today. We're going to be talking about mothers and some particulars and concern. And I'm excited because I'm a mom. My children are grown now, but you never stop being a mom, right?
For sure.
I used to think when I became an adult and I would go to my mother for certain things, and she was like, "Girl, you are grown now." And I'm like, "But I don't feel grown." And so now I'm on this side, and it's my daughter tells me the exact same thing. She was like, "But Ma, you're still my mom." You know?
Right. I'm still going to come to you as my mother.
So I'm gonna get you to go ahead and introduce yourself, and I want us to get into the conversation on today.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Brianna, for having me on the show. This is a thrill and honor, and I love the opportunity to meet beautiful people like you
Well,
doing
thank you.
this and an opportunity to share what's going on with me. So the Dr. Gertrude Lyons, that was a pivotal moment in my life as I share a couple things about myself, and I know you'll have heard the particulars, but the journey to get a doctorate, and I finished that in 2017, was, I call it my third child, right? I have two biological children that are grown also, and the completing a doctorate was my third child. And that was on the transformational. So it was a doctorate in transformational leadership and coaching and my particular focus and what I journeyed into was raising women's awareness in the transformational opportunity in motherhood. And when I tell you that took me on my own huge transformational journey,
Yeah.
and as these things do, right? And that's what I came and now that was in 2017. This year, as of the telling of this show, I have a book, my first book coming out, which is my fourth child.
Congratulations.
So my first book, Rewrite the Mother Code. So that Rewrite the Mother Code, from sacrifice to stardust, a cosmic approach to motherhood. And so my journey has been, when my husband and I, it'll be 35 years married. When we got engaged, I had the suggestion from my boss at the time, and I was young. I was in my early 20s. I don't know what I thought. I was ready to get married. But anyway, luckily he stepped in and gave me some of the best advice anyone's ever given, unsolicited. That's okay. He didn't even say congratulations, but he said, "Okay, I suggest you do premarital counseling." And now, granted, he was going through a divorce and a not so great one. Not that any of them are good, contentious. So I took it to heart. It was probably one of my first really strong is to follow an intuition. It didn't make logical sense. Like, I'm marrying this great guy. Like, I'm going to have everything. He's smart and good looking, already financially stable with huge promise, right? So all these security needs, all the American dreams, supposed relationship, he checked those boxes. But in the back of my mind, I knew, yeah, but it's not, it's far from perfect. And I looked at our parents' marriages, and his parents were divorced there was alcoholism on both of our sides. Long story short, we did not have a model for a healthy relationship. So I'm like, maybe my boss has something here. Maybe this is something I can learn about. So that I'm going way back then to set context for this choice. And we have these choice points in our life. And I think transitions like getting married, having a child, going through divorce, losing a loved one, so many like obvious transitions are actually this really beautiful, ripe time for self-development, self-awareness, healing, growing, transforming. And I might not have articulated it exactly then. It was just, oh, this helped us stay married. Like I didn't know much beyond that. So we worked with a therapist and coach. And the biggest thing I would say from that I've carried through in my life is the more I know about myself, the more internal work I do and healing and looking at generational trauma, the more I can actually like have intimacy and closeness in a relationship.
Yeah.
And it opens that space and opens those doors in ways that we never could have imagined from what we had grown up with, right? I didn't even know this was possible, right? And
Mhm.
now having been married so long, I hope our kids take it further. Like this was more than I could have imagined. I hope they go way
Yeah.
farther than us because we by far didn't do it perfectly. So that kind of just set us on this trajectory of learning and growing and self-development that I was really the leader in our family until I had kids.
Mhm.
And once the second child came along, I started, I don't know, I do know a level of fear set in of, because when you do this kind of work, you're pushing the envelope, right? You're rocking the boat. A lot of people don't do it because it's, oh, I don't want to lose what I have that's so good, even though there's
Mhm.
things that could be better and go into the unknown. And I hit that wall personally with when our second daughter arrived, nothing to do with her. It was just
Mhm.
like, now I have two little ones. I don't want to like rock the boat in our marriage. We'll
Mhm.
just keep things, we'll maintain. We did, and we parented consciously, but I stopped growing. So that's what I discovered when I reflected back when my daughters were teenagers and now it's in evident that they're gonna leave for college or leave our home and in the not too distant future, that I reflected back and I'm like, "Oh, man, that was a missed opportunity on my part." Like,
Mhm.
I feel fine about them. But also, what would it have been like if I had kept growing,
Mhm.
and what would that have contributed? So, that sent me into the world of I'd gotten 2 master's degrees by then, but I was done with school. It's okay. I'm
Mhm.
doing this. I'm now academically and experientially feel like a good sound coach, right? And that's what I was doing. I was actually leading other women to have these experiences that I had
Mhm.
cut myself off from. I'll just say a little bit more and then we can go from there. But this experience, this looking back brought up a lot of remorse, regret, pain from an experience that I turned away from. And I decided in that moment, like this pain wasn't going to go to waste. I wanted to support my own healing in that, but mostly like, how can I share with other women that this is a challenging path to stay on, but a worthwhile one? And how do I pick it back up now? And which saying yes to a doctorate did that quite well for me and really start exploring again and putting myself back in the picture and studying about it, sure, but really it was a big journey in my own healing. So then
Mhm.
finish that, and then that's been but the focus of my platform. I do a whole range of life coaching couples and men, women, everything, but my niche is with mothers, with women, having us navigate that what can be really challenging depending on our families and cultures, but has this just huge potential for empowerment, for
Mhm.
healing, for so many ways that we can. That's why I called it the subtitle of a cosmic approach, because I don't mean that in this just, oh, but at the same time, it's like, then it's sacred, it's holy, we can connect with the divine when we go on this journey. So
Yeah.
I, I just said, I always think I'm going to do this in a short little like
Yeah.
snippet, but
No, you're
that's the
fine.
short, long story.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. As you were talking, it made me think about, especially, first of all, kudos to premarital counseling. Thank you
Mm,
for going to a therapist. I always tell people,
mm,
please stop going to your ministers, go to a therapist. But I love that the fact when you said that you you stop growing. You stop growing. And a lot of times I know I have women that come to me and I tell them that when you that's really a time where you really can find out more about who you are as a woman through your children. You have that opportunity to grow. It reminded me of when I was my daughter is my child who brought out these things that I had hidden in me that I
mm.
thought that first of all, I never thought was there. Number one. Number two, there
Oh,
were some things that I thought I had healed from and I had. And
mm,
so she's my baby that really brought all those things out. And so that growth really came from mothering her. And so one of the lessons that and growth points for me that was
Yeah.
really hard was she was giving me such a hard time, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with her.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I remember sitting in my space where I would meditate and pray. And I heard God say to me, he said, you love her conditionally. And I'm like, not me. Not me. Not super Christian. Not me. That's not me. That is not. I said, that is the devil talking to me because it's no way.
I love it.
But it took me on such a journey of identifying some things that I had stopped because I had to be mom and I had to make
Mm.
sure I did this and I had to make sure my kids were this and this. But it just opened me up to some things within. And even though there were hard times or then there were great times, but it was always a growing time
Mm.
for me.
Yeah.
But I
That's
think, and
beautiful.
I'm gonna let you expound on it because this is your expertise. But
Mm.
I believe that we have to be open to hear and open to see in
Mhm.
order for us to even be able to recognize and to perceive the opportunities of growth as we are mothering our children.
I totally agree, Brianna. And I love that anecdote you just shared, right? Because you are open to growth, but sometimes the message that comes through isn't what this perception we have of ourselves or
Right.
what we were even asking for or
Mhm.
but you are someone with a growth mindset, right? And you may not, at first you may question it. No, that's not me.
Mhm.
But I think that big next step is if we can be curious. If that, I always like to use the phrasing, if theoretically that was true, because our mind is always trying to keep us safe. It's always
Mhm.
trying to like put that, keep us to that perception we have of ourselves that feels
Mhm.
good. And
Mhm.
sometimes these truths come at us and don't feel so good in the moment. So if we can have a little distance and say, theoretically, how might this be true? And that's what you did, right? You're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, okay, if I do some looking here, it doesn't mean I still didn't have good intentions, right? It wasn't I didn't have ill intent. I wasn't, like, an advocate for conditional love,
Right.
right? Prove that's, like, the way to go." And then that opens so many doors, right? Once you say yes to exploring it, then you can see, "Oh, there's a reason I like this. I went into that because that's what I saw done or what I didn't have in my life, and so I'm gonna do it this way," and that can I always have particularly moms explore both what they liked about their upbringings and how they were raised and what they didn't like, not starting with not putting a whole lot of what's this is blame or whatnot on it, but just sorting out what did I like,
Mhm.
what I didn't like, because the more we can bring those to consciousness and have that awareness,
Mhm.
then we have more choice,
Yeah.
right? Then we have a choice. Like, right, I didn't like how this went down in my upbringing. So our reactive with before we do some work on it or explore it more, we're just going to say, "Oh, so I'm going to do the opposite." And then you're just reactively doing the exact opposite and
Mhm.
swinging the pendulum in a whole other direction. And we don't really want that either. We want to look at and make this choice of what's but I love your example because you grew, you discovered something about yourself and
Yeah.
through that exploration. And
Yeah. And
and you were open to receiving. And I think that was like your question, right? Like you
mhm.
were seeking, you were asking,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And if you haven't made that choice to open up to messages,
Mhm.
to the path of learning, growing,
Mhm.
healing, transforming, that's all just gonna you can just
Yeah.
throw those aside. And
Mhm.
I could have totally thrown aside my boss's suggestion for premarital counseling as he's just doing that because he's bitter about his divorce and he doesn't really know anything. And then we would have we wouldn't be married, I can promise you. All those things that were in our parents' marriages would have
Showing up in
been
yours.
there and shown up, and not like we couldn't have gotten help along the way, and possibly we would have, but
Mhm.
there was there was a much higher likelihood that we would not be married today.
And that premarital counseling actually prepares you for what will come. And it's always, it was something that had came to me once before, and it was a couple within this year. Poor preparation leads to poor results. And so if you don't prepare,
Yeah.
then the results will be poor, because it's so much easier to have tools. And then when things show up in your marriage, you guys know, okay, I remember, let's deal with this, versus, oh, we're here now and you're not talking. I don't
Yeah.
like you, you don't like me. So what do you, now we're just tolerating each other. And then comes the kids, and then it just makes things just harder. But if you prepare before properly, it makes things a lot smoother. Not saying it won't be bumpy, but it's a lot smoother than what it would be if you had not the tools.
That is so true. Yeah. And something that I think was pivotal from doing that work pre-marriage that has carried through our lives and in my coaching and in the work that I do was creating a vision for yourself, creating a vision for our marriage. And that ended up in our vows, so to speak. And so those vows really meant something. And we still bring it up like, oh, how are we doing in these areas in our vows? Like, one sounds so simple to say, we'll be partners, lovers, and best friends. Those all take work, right? The best friends being one of the more challenging. What does it really mean to be a best friend? There's partner we had down from the start, lovers and that level of intimacy, both emotional and physical. We've worked on that our whole marriage. And best friends where you're really like allies with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your go-to. I had a conversation with a male friend of mine, and he said one of the things that you women do is that once y'all get married, you leave. He said you become our wives, and you stop being our girlfriends.
Mm.
He said, as girlfriends, we can tell you anything. We can laugh about. He said, but once you become wife, you don't want to hear it. Something changes and shifts in you. And
Oh.
I said, I think for a lot of people, they don't, and again, I'm going to go back to doing the work prior to the ceremony, right? So you don't do the
Yep.
work prior to the ceremony. And so when you get into the actual marriage, that foundation is a little rocky. It's really a little rocky, because sometimes what you have is that women will, or and men, you may tell us a little bit, and we're thinking you're telling us everything. I said, and then we get into the marriage, and then here comes some more stuff. And it's, wait a minute, I didn't know that part about you, versus let's be totally vulnerable before we get to the ceremony. And when I say vulnerable, tell me when, because one of the biggest things that I have been finding is that women, it's not that I just found it out, but what's been coming
Right.
across to me is this
Yeah.
jealousy piece, because we're getting older. And so there are things that change. And then depending upon the husband's occupation. Now you don't like all the phone calls that he's getting from females, but they're his patients, or they're his clients, or they're his congregants. That's part of what he does is his career. And now the woman is becoming jealous, and the man is, but I want to tell her, but I can't, because now she's catching an attitude, and she's telling me this one likes me, and she's telling me that one likes me, and she's telling me I'm flirting, and she's telling, and I'm like, we're gonna have to really dig into this, because if the work had been done for her to be very secure in who you are and who she is, a lot of times it's in who she is that she's not secure in. Because when you're a secure woman, if you choose to do that to me, that's your loss. I'm going to be hurt, but that's your loss. You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
And
it's
most
beautiful.
men
I love what you're saying.
yeah, and most men are attracted to that secure woman. They're like, my wife, she handle it. He's not worried about it. He's so not worried about it. He so loves to come home to her. But when he has to come home to someone who is not secure, he doesn't like to come home. And that's when you start finding that emotional affair starts to happen. So what you keep saying he was doing, he really does start to do it, because now he can't talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's
No,
what
you're
men
laying
like to
that
talk
out.
to.
No, I
So,
think you're laying it out beautifully and underlining that key piece, right? That sense of I might word it core sense of self. Like I know, and that's a continuous process. You don't reach this point like, I know who I am.
Right.
But you've gotten far enough on that journey where you know that you can trust yourself, your intuition. Like you said, you bring your own security. You're not looking outside yourself for that security, for that affirmation even. That's nice to get it from out there, but what you're underlining is it's got to come here first.
Right.
Right.
Because you're not
And
going to
then-
hear it from nobody else. If you don't feel good about yourself, your husband can tell you all day, every day, you're beautiful. You could have gained weight. And he's saying, I still love you just the way you are. You are not hearing anything that he is saying because you're not happy with yourself.
Yeah. True. Well, and then going back to this, because I do feel like that strong core sense of self and really getting clear on that, because that same therapist coach said, okay, we got through the wedding. Now the best thing you can do for your marriage is work on yourself.
Yes.
There's no real need because then you're gaining more of that sense of self. You do work on your past trauma so you recognize what's getting triggered in the relationship, because I used to run a workshop called Your Parents' Marriage or Yours.
Yeah.
Right. Because our wiring, and then in my book, I've called that like the codes that we have are all the codes from our childhood and our culture. Right. So those are wired in. We don't even know how deep they're wired in until we start looking. It's, oh my gosh. So this partner, this spouse partner is going to become your highly paid consultant to bring up all of your unfinished business. That's the job, right? You're not going to ever do enough work ahead of time to clear that out. You're just preparing yourself that it's to come, like you said, right? Like it's not if, but when those triggers are going to show up. And then I just want to name this and we can go into it further is then that's prepared. You get that solid for yourself and then your partnership or couple, if that's what you have when you invite children in, because they're going to do the same thing, right? They're going to do this. You think you've worked out it all, like you said. Like I thought I had that particular thing handled, and then my daughter came along, and you did it to the degree you needed it then. But then our children, these lovely little mirrors / instigators of stirring up pain, trauma, unfinished business, like that's part of their job for us, or the potential of their job. We think it's to raise them. They're there as little healing tools for ourselves.
Yes, they are.
But with that stability in yourself, and then if you've worked on it in your relationship with a partner or spouse, then I like the image of a tree, so to speak. If we think of a tree, and because this breaks one of the mother codes in my book, I name like 7 codes that really kind of mess with us as mothers as far as having this more transformational experience. And one of them is to be like the best mom. You put your children, your spouse, like ahead of you. Like they matter most. You maybe matter, but a little bit taking care of them. But when we do that, the core of that tree is you. Like that's the solid core. That's where the strength is. Then you add a partnership or who you're working with in this child rearing vicinity. And then the children, then that tree can weather strong winds and storms, and it's going to bend and flex. Whereas if we try and do it in the opposite, it's just going to fall right over. It just doesn't withstand the way we think it is. So I like to add that one too, because we all know it. Anytime I say the most important person we need to mother is ourselves, people are like, oh, I know. But the doing it and giving yourself the permission and the deserving and working on whatever it is in the way to actually start making it happen is another story. That's the real work.
I was listening to a podcast earlier today on my way. I was going somewhere, and it was a lady on there. She was saying that her idea of motherhood was this perfect, picture perfect, just doing everything right, and a good wife, a good mother, and I was like, motherhood is first of all, it's messy, very messy. And it put in the mind, it made me think about Martha Stewart. I watched her story, and she had this picture perfect mom cooking and looking pretty. And I'm like, honey, that was for her. That is not for everybody. Because really, if we can't teach our children that we can be vulnerable and that we are not perfect, we're setting them up for failure because they're just going to repeat the pattern. And being able to have those discussions, especially with our young girls, that every day is just not a beautiful day. Every day is not a day where you're going to show up and you're going to feel good, but knowing that you're still beautiful from the inside out, knowing that you don't have to dot every I, cross every T to be somebody, because there are times where we're just not going to do it. And it's all right.
Mhm.
It's really all right. But if they
It
can
really
see
is.
us doing it, like we have to model these things. I always say, you can say a lot of stuff to your children, but they always are going to do what they see. Just like
Here, here.
we're sitting here today saying, you know what? We are the way we are because of what we saw, not because of what they said, because they said a lot of things to us, but what
Mhm.
we saw is what was imputed in us.
Here, here. That's 100% true. And you use the word, I think, at the beginning, modeling, right?
Mhm.
That's the strongest teacher because it's the most consistent thing we're doing. It's how we're showing up every day.
Mhm.
And that's why I like to also tell moms it's not before that when we're saying like there's some idea of perfect or some
Mhm.
idea of because that's all pretense. That's all like
Yeah.
for show. And it's what there's been periods of time like that's what we thought was attainable or how what being a good mother meant was holding it all together. And if everything looks perfect, it is, right? And
Mhm.
no,
Mhm.
there's a beautiful book that I read while I was in my studies, and it's Dr. Alison Gopnik, and it's called The Gardener or the Carpenter.
Mhm.
And there's a subtitle that I don't remember. And she likens parenthood and motherhood, parenthood to being a gardener or a carpenter. And the carpenter is that more what we were talking about with that woman on the podcast, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm going to carve out this like ideal, like what I think this ideal for my child should be. It's carving out the life, it's carving out like, and then carving their life, right?
Mhm.
Because they're a reflection of you, right?
Right.
They're, when you said that
Yeah.
unconditional love, it's no, I'm not worried. Like they'll be fine, but like they have to look good for me or they have
Mhm.
to reflect me. So you're chiseling and trying to create this certain thing. But the garden's a whole different story. Like the
Right.
garden is, yes, you plant seeds, but yes, you nourish it. You provide it the sun, the what it needs. And there's parts of you in that seed, your spouse, but also it's its own being.
Mhm.
It's its own being. And we just want to give it the environment to grow into what it's supposed to be. But it rains, there's storms, it's messy.
Mhm.
Manure is fertilizer, right? You gotta
Mhm.
get your hands dirty. You gotta,
Right.
get in there
Right.
and do it. That always sticks out for me as such a beautiful metaphor and
Mhm.
something that I think we can get. And I'd love to say I was the total gardener mother, but no, that's somewhat when you start losing track of yourself. I did lose some of my identity. I did lose myself and my children and start thinking,
Mhm.
oh, yes, it's the best for them that I wanted them to get in good schools or do this so that then when they go to apply to college and grades are important versus their being and the more
Mhm.
feminine aspects of
Mhm.
life and their emotions and their being and what do they like and getting to know them. Just wanted to add more of that to what you were saying because it's so
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, because I love that you said that because one of my problems when my kids were younger was that I needed them to be, first of all, I had already had their lives carved out. Like this is when I had my son, I was like, oh yeah, me and him, we're gonna rock it out and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that and this. And then some things happened and then my daughter came and I'm like, oh, she's gonna be a princess and she's gonna have, this and we're gonna dress alike. What? God was like, no, honey, this is not your way. This is my way.
Yeah.
And everything
Mhm.
and I said, "This has got to be a cruel joke, God, because this is not
Right?
what I wanted." It was so bad. I remember we were at Disney and my daughter she was 5 and she was arguing with me because it was a pirate line, it was a princess line. And I was like, "You're going to the princess line." She was like, "No, I want to go to the pirate line." And I was like, "Go to the princess line." And we had family with us and they were like, "Please let her go to the pirate line." And I was like,
Mhm.
but I felt like I was being a bad mom. This is a reflection of me. I
Mm.
got to be doing something wrong. If you don't do things the way that I've laid it out, then
I
people are
must
gonna
be
look
doing
at
something
me.
wrong. Yes.
Yeah, they're gonna look at me and blame me the way you're turning out. And God
Yeah.
was like, "This is not about you. Relax.
Mm.
Let her become. Let him become. Let them become who they are. They are just little people with personalities and likes and dislikes. Let them be and let them
Mhm.
choose their path and don't choose it because when they grow up, they're going to have a hard time because they're not going to know who
Mm.
they are because you don't know who you are."
Yeah, and that so beautiful, Brianna, and there's an aspect to that I just wanna underline, which is who really wanted to be the princess, right? I did. I wanted that, and then we projected onto our
Mhm.
children when we yeah, an unmet need or a yearning, which is totally beautiful, totally
Mhm.
fine. There's nothing wrong with the it's like you said, I mapped it out with both of them, but until we're aware, we're mapping out, like, our our own, like, childhood we had hoped to have or the missing pieces or the gaps, right? And then when they, like, don't agree, you're like, "What? Doesn't every child want this? Every little
Right.
girl? Like, I wanted to be a princess and I couldn't," and for however it worked for you, but it's like, "So you're gonna be the princess." I had
Mhm.
that come up so strongly with giving my kids music lessons
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I was told through my whole upbringing, like, I asked a few times, "Can I play an instrument? Can I" And I knew my dad's side of the family, but he was very musical. I knew a little bit about that. He had aptitudes for it. Always no. And sometimes they even said directly, "We don't want that noise in the house. My kids are gonna play instruments because I'm a
Mhm.
sub." So at 3 years old, I start Suzuki violin with my daughter. And Suzuki violin, like that framework, like you have to as a parent be a part of it. Like you
Mhm.
come to the lessons, like you support them and they're I didn't know what the F I was doing.
Yeah.
I one, and then she's not having fun, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"But you're gonna do it
Mhm.
because whatever." And I luckily did had a coach at the time who was like, "So who wants the violin? Where's this coming from?" Right? Because I
Right.
was probably complaining about them being I don't know why they're giving me so much grief about this. It's who really wants to play violin? So I started my own violin lessons.
Mhm.
And then then that became a healing for me to do something I'd always wanted to do. I had just assumed I wasn't musical. And he's, no, you're doing great. Like you absolutely have an aptitude. And then getting up there and doing a recital, like going through what they were going through. So I had a sense of like how hard of an instrument the violin is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But then that became something that I learned and grew. I did some of my own healing, and then we could then be in it together
Mhm.
with an understanding and a place of mutuality,
Mhm.
right? We're going to learn and grow together in
Mhm.
this. And that's how it can look a little bit differently that we don't think about or realize. If I hadn't had a coach suggest that,
Mhm.
I either would have let them quit, which is what my mom always did, is if something was hard for me, it's like, "Well, you can quit." So
Mhm.
I wanted them to have some perseverance. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I would have gotten frustrated and just been like, "Okay, forget it."
Yeah. And I think that's that fine line or that delicate dance that we do because we want them to persevere, but at the same time, we don't want them to do something they don't like to do.
I
So trying to teach them that there are some things that you're not gonna, but you have to see it to the end. But there are some things you don't have to see to the end. But how do we distinguish which ones are which?
yeah. And I think that's the grace of parenting, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're gonna make the best, and if we can be a bit informed, like, where are we coming from ourselves, right?
Mhm.
When we're, like, maybe pushing them to keep going and opening a space for them to talk about it, having certain principles and values in the family,
Mhm.
right? And then setting up my husband and I just said, "We think this is something that's good for you, a musical instrument. We're picking it right
Mhm.
now at a certain age if you want to change instruments, but we're going to hold that you play a musical instrument, some other things through high school."
Mhm.
And that's just, you can change what it is, but we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And that was healing for me too, to see them, to stay with it with them.
Mhm.
during the hard times and then see the joy that they felt when they did persevere and
Mhm.
when it was a hard time.
Mhm.
And so I think it is a constant like checking in with yourself, getting them to articulate more about why they may want to quit or why they want to change the instrument. If we can have dialogues about it amongst us, I think that makes a huge that's just as important as the thing we're trying to get them to keep doing.
Yeah, and I think as mothers, one of the things that we are good at, whether we say it out loud or whether we just with our actions, we don't always give that space for our children to communicate, fully communicate and be very transparent because something on the inside of us, either because of what was we saw or because of the fear of what they might say to us in that space of being transparent and just being able to be vulnerable and say what they really feel about certain stuff. And I'm saying that because again, I'm thinking about the podcast I watched earlier. Not watched, but
Mhm.
listened to earlier. She said that her daughter had told her, "Mom, I really want to let you know that you have been really fake."
She brought the truth.
She brought the truth.
Whoa.
And the mom said that because in all of her trying to be perfect, her daughters could see that she was not being who she truly was. She wasn't happy. Even though she
Mm.
had a smile, she really wasn't happy. And in all of her trying to just show everybody that, um, her daughters was like, "No, that's not you. We want our real mom."
What a gift they gave them. What the gift they gave her.
Y
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Good for them.
And sometimes, and like you said, our children are there to actually a lot of times to heal us, but we gotta be open to hear what they're saying. My daughter told me, I never forget, she told me, she said, "You are very judgmental." I said, "I'm not." She said,
Yeah,
"Yes, you are."
Christian me, remember?
I'm like, she was like, "You're judgmental." And she just walked off. But it made me think, am I being
Mhm.
judgmental? But I was. I was being very judgmental because what I was trying to do and what I was doing in reality was being manipulative,
Mm.
showing my disapproval in hopes that she would bend towards what I wanted and not go down this path that I was like so scared. I'm like, don't go there again because it all had to do with me. And when we're not being intentional about checking in with ourselves, and I want to get back to your point when you said about we have to know who we are as individuals, as women. And so
Mhm.
taking the time to, even if you sitting with yourself and not throwing your whole being into motherhood or into being a wife, but being intentional with that. Let me sit with me. Even if you got to get up early in the morning, even if you got to stay up a little later at night. But that's if you can sacrifice for everybody in the house, why can't you sacrifice for you?
Right.
Why can't you love you enough?
And
You know?
asking those questions literally of yourself. There's a reason, right? And to
Mhm,
have start with compassion. I'm going by some rules that are wired in here and they don't feel good, but I'm doing them, right?
mhm,
Anyway,
mhm,
because that just, it feels like what I'm supposed to, because it's just what we saw modeled, what
mhm,
generations of not seeing mothers, grandmothers putting themselves in the picture, let alone full on deep self care and self nurturing for themselves.
mhm, mhm.
And I think that's something I hope to be making a dent in. And you
Yeah.
are with these kind of conversations, like
Mhm,
busting that mistaken belief
mm,
and showing, no, everybody does better. And it's one of the reasons I studied it. It wasn't just, oh, I think people do better or that. No, we have plenty of studies to show that everybody benefits when a woman is given or creates the support that she needs, when we have a decent amount of care, that we have some tools to unpack what's in the way of us giving this to ourselves. And
mhm.
then it's an internal job, but we have to know it's possible, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
know that it really, it, that was probably one of the big reasons I wrote my book. It's I want women to know this is possible, that there's women out there doing it,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
going for it. Might get knocked down a little bit, but and yeah,
Mhm.
does it bring us, and I always like to break the illusion too. It's okay that self-care doesn't then make everything just, and this self-awareness that we're talking about, this, really knowing ourselves and being present and, in touch with ourselves actually allows us to feel our emotions and feel things more strongly.
Yeah.
And so we're going to feel that pain, feel those hurts. This isn't giving us a formula to numb any of that. It's giving us a formula that we are created to embody that those emotions are a beautiful part of us. And they've been shut down and silenced and every which way, right, possible to that has been tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we believe it. Once we start claiming our voice, that's a framework I have in my book. I use the word voice to show, yes, claiming our voice, but that voice means having a vision, taking ownership of our bodies, our experience, following our intuition, the I in voice. Like, intuition is, on par with knowledge, right? Like we're so in a world where something has to be studied and proven and there's rational knowledge for it when our intuition is like, ooh, so strong. We need community, a culture of community versus aloneness on E, and then just engaged, right? Like you got to put it into action and apply all of that. And that's what I feel we're on podcasts, why we're sharing about these things.
Yeah. What would you tell a mom that is struggling? I like community. What would you tell a mom that was struggling with that whole community? Because I believe that sometimes we can be in a group but still feel alone or still not feel part of a community.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a huge challenge in our world right now, Brianna, is we've distanced ourselves so much from family. We don't live in this community where we've been with people and working it out and learning and growing together. So we're creating communities but first I'm going to go back to that knowing ourselves, right? And so we never have to feel alone. I think that's something I call one of the cosmic codes. We really are never alone. And we have spirit, we have God, we have our ancestors. So I like to start from the framework of it's really a false reality that you're alone. But so then we add to it, but being with physical people is a good thing, right? But the more we know ourselves and have dove in and created this vision for the kind of values and principles, then if we can find community that aligns with those, it doesn't have to mean every belief, everything. There's enough of an alignment in how they're living their lives, the choices that they're making align with you. Then I feel like you can start making that connection and understanding when we're going into a new community that it is my job to create that belonging, right? Like I need to always be the own host of of a party, even if I'm not giving it. Right. And take that responsibility. I guess that would be the ownership part and the own my experience in this community. But the like-mindedness I think is really important because I think as moms raising children, like being around other moms is great. But if we're in one where we're early on, we're still like judging and competing out of our own insecurities. So that's where if I'm secure in myself, then I'm not trying to compare myself to the other moms. And that's where I think sometimes those mom communities can get a little wonky, or it's all about just complaining about stuff. But when you can find those people that are exploring with you, that's a beautiful thing. And that you deserve it. I think that's a big piece. We deserve to have people supporting us and having that community of support.
Yeah. Because moms can be a little funny, different groups. So you just gotta make sure you find your community. Find your community. If a community is not yours, and it is all right, it does not mean something is wrong with you. I think when I first started getting back out there, and trying to get amongst people, because we had a stint where my daughter was diagnosed with cancer, so we were in and out the hospital. So it was a weird season for us. And when I started going back out there, I was like, I don't know if I belong. I don't know if I belong out here. because some of the
Where do
conversations
I
that we were
fit?
having, I was like, my mind wasn't on that. And I'm not a superficial person. And so I like to have deep, meaningful conversations. And so some of the things that they were talking about, like complaining about little stuff. And I'm like, who wants to talk about that?
Yeah.
I want to talk about, did you read this book?
Yeah.
Did you read this? Or what are you doing? Do you like to do this? Let's go and do, things that's going to, because if I'm going to be out in community, not only do I want to get to know people, but I want to also experience life together. So how can we
Mhm.
experience life together?
Mhm.
So things like that. But it was weird when I
Exactly.
first got out there. I was
Yeah.
like,
And you had been through such a big experience and you're raw and vulnerable. And it just, I think sometimes you have to go out. And then when you come back in, oh, like,
mm-hmm.
this is not me. Right. And you have
Yeah.
more of a clarity with it
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes this growing and learning and really discovering you does sometimes mean letting go of people that used to fit your life, but don't anymore. And that's
Mm-hmm.
hard. That can be a challenge, but so worth it.
Very, you would
We
discover
need,
how freedom can really be when
Mhm.
you let them go.
Exactly. That energy of and I don't mean like-minded from everyone else is bad. It's like you said, it's like-minded from I like to have deep conversations. I like to find a book and have us like debate it. We're
Yeah.
not talking just like agreement and
Mhm.
everything and anything,
Right.
but this is people who are willing to be thoughtful and make discerning choices and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
see each other.
right, because that's when you really are connected. 'Cause when you think about it, when I become sick, who walks through the door? That's your people. Who is walking through that door? That's your people. Because as moms, you're my children, you're my husband, but where are my people that we have this deep connection with?
Here, here.
So, so I'm not gonna. I don't want to prolong the time. I want you to tell us where we can get your book from. I have really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Oh, me too, Brianna. Oh my God. You're like, I hope I can add you to my community because you're amazing. Yeah. So my book, Rewrite the Mother Code, it's available where, as we're recording this right now, you pre-order, but it's still available to buy. It launches May 13th, 2025. And so wherever books are sold, but I'd love for you to come to my website, drgertrudelyons.com, because right now, I'm going to be offering pre-order bonuses. Those are almost up on the site where you can get some extra bonuses to incentivize and some freebie things and things to discover. I'd love to have people on my newsletter list and so you can keep apprised. But you can, as I said, at my website, you can find all of those things. Subscribing, the book, like all the things that I'm doing. Really
Good,
appreciate that.
good, yeah. So we want to make sure that we go and sign up for your newsletter because I'm sure you have all kinds of goodies in the newsletter. Is it catered towards moms?
Somewhat, we didn't even get into this, Brianna, but like I have this overarching message that everyone mothers, we all
Mm-hmm.
mother, whether and one beautiful way we conceive, create, and give birth is to children, but we also mother careers, we mother relationships, ideas, dreams, pets. Wherever we're putting our caring and creative energy, we're mothering.
Yeah.
So it isn't like if I put it this way, because these are great, but a mom helpline kind
Mm-hmm.
of newsletter. It's a more of a empower us to mother ourselves
Yeah.
newsletter. And what does that
Yeah.
look like? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny you said that when you said someone told me one time, they said, you have mothered that situation long enough.
Yeah. That's the kind of the like, maybe, yeah. And it's time to let it go, right? Because
Let it
that's
go.
part of the journey of mother.
Yeah.
We have them with us for a period of time. And then
Yeah.
if we did our job well, they leave us.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
thought that when you said that. Is that a joke, like a cosmic joke? Put all your heart and soul into this so that they are independent and off on their own.
It reminds you of a picture of a mother and father. They're sitting in the doorway as their youngest is leaving the home, and they're like, bye. They're sad until they get in that car and go down the road, and they're like, yes, house to ourselves.
Exactly. That's
I
so
thank you
true.
for joining us on
I loved
today.
it.
I really do appreciate it. Please make sure that you guys run to the description. Links are going to be in the description. Run there. The book comes out the day after my birthday. And so I know it's going to be good because anything in the month of May is always good.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful, Brianna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Haven for Soul Care. We hope today's conversation has provided you with the encouragement and tools to take care of yourself and embrace the journey ahead. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and sharing it with others who may benefit. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Take a moment today to nurture your soul. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Haven for Soul Care. We hope today's conversation has provided you with the encouragement and tools to take care of yourself and embrace the journey ahead. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and sharing it with others who may benefit. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Take a moment today to nurture your soul. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.